Hey, this is Paul, and welcome to Talking About Hawking Out. So, this is Talking About Hawking Out. This is the first video on my new YouTube channel I'm in. This channel is all about the Seahawks. It's going to cover the Hawks on a weekly basis. With this show you're watching here, it's going to be our flagship show. And it's also going to feature specialty stories, just funny, focused videos, funny or interesting, or hopefully maybe even a little tear-jerking. Various things about the Hawks, and of course, breaking news throughout the week. Starting with 0 views, 0 subscribers, and one of my personal goals here is to actually really pump this channel up, so it'll be a little bit of a fun journey, a side note. But really, it's all about the Seahawks. It's all about the 12s and whatever the Hawks are going to bring this year. So every week on Talking About Hawking Out, we're going to take a look back at the previous week's action. We're going to pause when there's a sound, and we're just going to roll with it. There's no editing, baby. And we're going to take a look ahead and preview the next game, the next week's games coming up. And, it's funny. This summer, I read Pete Carroll's book, Win Forever. And he talks about playing in the zone in the absence of fear. And he tells a story about how when he was playing baseball, his team was losing. There was no way they could come back, and he was up to bat. And he says he remembers thinking, no matter what happens here, no matter what I do, how well I perform or how poorly, it's not going to affect the outcome of the game. We're not going to win. And that mentality, even though it seems a little negative, it actually freed him to play loose and to be himself. So, it's kind of funny. You could hear a little bit of nervousness in my voice or whatever, but at the end of the day, what's it going to matter? Doesn't matter. So I'm just coming from the that same mentality that probably is about 5 of you watching right now. And it's going to be a little herky-jerky and rough getting the show off the ground, but it'll be a learning process, and it'll be it'll get smoother and cooler and more slick and all that. But enough about me and enough about the infantile state of this show. Let's get into it. So every week we're going to look back, and now this is Wednesday, the first Wednesday before the first preseason game of the year. On Saturday, we take on the Kansas City Chiefs. They were a pretty good team, but before we get into that, let's take a look back. And since we didn't have a preseason game last weekend, we're going to look back into the 2015 Seahawks and just take a look at their season and maybe kind of let that give us a little bit of perspective as we roll into the 2016. So last year, 2015. And to even get into that, you kind of have to look into the way we ended the 2014 season, which was we were in the Super Bowl, right? It was our return trip to the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. It was a very hard-fought game. And so we stopped short right at the 1-yard line and made the call to throw the ball instead of giving it to Marshawn Lynch, our money back. And unfortunately, we threw an interception, and that's how the game ended. That's how our Super Bowl ended. That was pretty tough to take, pretty heartbreaking. All in all, 2014, successful season. We made it to the Super Bowl. We were NFC champs, very entertaining, and it's hard to lose that way, but the overall game, you look back and you think we just lost to one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, if not the best quarterback in Tom Brady, and one of the greatest franchises of all time in the New England Patriots. So, you kind of go, but it sticks with you. You hate to lose that way. So we have the offseason, and Marshawn Lynch going into the 2015 season last year, it was either last year or the year before, he was whining a little bit about his contract, and the Hawks were like, well, you just signed. We can't set a precedent of renegotiating your contract, so what we'll do is we'll up you, we'll give you some cookies, we'll give you some of the guaranteed money up front. And so that kind of made him happy. And I can't remember if that was the 2014 or 2015 season, but I don't know if that spurred Kam Chancellor to his actions, but Kam Chancellor had just signed a contract, and it wasn't even 2 years into it when he decided, oh, well, no, wait a minute, I'm severely underpaid. And the funny thing is Michael Bennett was making noise at the same time, but Michael Bennett even credited his wife, just said, I'm just going to work. I'm just going to go to work and do my job, and the contract will take care of himself, even though he was and still is incredibly underpaid. But we'll get back to that later. Kam Chancellor decides to hold out. He's like, I'm renegotiating my contract. My agent apparently is saying, if I hold out, the Hawks will bend. So Kam Chancellor decides to miss all of training camp, all of the preseason games, and even takes his holdout into 2 games into the regular season to prove a point, to try to get the Hawks to bend. Well, the Seahawks put their foot down, and they said, we're not going to cave to this. We're not going to set a precedent of having the players determine our business in that way. And from a fan's perspective, I kind of lost a little love for Kam. I mean, you understand that the players, it's a hard job, and really we've seen people almost lose their lives in the field. So there's no denying that they deserve the money. Plus, there's a huge cut. I mean, realistically, the Seahawks owner, Paul Allen, he's a billionaire. I mean, he's got the money, you know. So if you don't get the money as a player, your mentality as well is just going to go in his pocket. So you don't begrudge a player for trying to get everything he can. And it's a cold business. If you're not performing, you're out the door, and you're on to another team, despite maybe your ties or your love for the area. So you don't, as a fan, I don't look poorly upon his motivation to be well paid. Unfortunately, he did sign a contract, and if it's a poor contract, he still signed it nonetheless, and so he needs to honor that, and needed to. And in fact, he lost out in the end. The Hawks did not bend, and after 2 games, 2 losses to start the season, even though they were specifically attributed to Kam's actions. In fact, in the first game during the Rams, his replacement corner tripped and fell. And, I mean, you're just thinking, okay, if Kam is there, we win that game. So, long story short, Kam holds out 2 games of the regular season. We lose both games, but the Hawks are basically saying, look, we're going to throw the whole season in the tank if that's what it takes to prove our point, that we're not going to be pushed around by our players who signed a contract. And they can say that, we're going to take care of you in the future and all that, but really it's what's on paper and what they can do. And I stand by their position on that. You can't run a business. You can't set a season. If at any moment some players are going to just decide, well, you know what? I don't really like the way this is turning out. One of the things I do for fun is make short films. And even though it's completely amateur, you still put them out there either in film festivals or even on YouTube. And if you have actors or people who are going to participate in the films, you have them sign a release form, even though most of the people were just my best friends. And some of them were like, why would I sign this? And the reality is that sometimes people go into a situation and they give their best, and then later they think, you know what, I wouldn't want that on TV, or I don't want that in the film. But as a filmmaker, you've got all this footage that you're working with, and you're like, okay, this is going to work, this is going to work. You can't, therefore, a little while later turn around and have one of your friends or somebody who was in the film say, I don't really like the way I look in that scene, so I'm not going to let you use it. So really that's why you got to CYA, cover your butt, and get people to sign the release form. So in effect, you can't build a film without the release forms, and the analogy is you can't build a football season without the release forms, without knowing that your players are going to be there and not just one day say, oh, I'm not being paid enough. So he lost out on that. And that's good. It's not good that he lost money, but it's good that the Hawks put their foot down and said this isn't going to happen. So here we are, 0-2, and Kam Chancellor comes back to the team. And there were rumblings of his teammates really being displeased with his choice to hold out, and there was no doubt that it affected the chemistry of the defense, of the LOB, and they really took a long time to recover, to come back, because I think that he had to not only get back into football shape, obviously, it took him a while, but for them to bring back their cohesiveness and their one unit mentality and to really work together again. So, 0-2 start. Well, Kam comes back, and we start winning a little bit. And after 6 games, we go 2-4. Okay, pretty crappy still. at this point, I'm thinking this just does not look good. And meanwhile, Russell Wilson has got a bad habit of throwing really crucial interceptions. So this interception hangover kind of carries through the entire year. And every time he throws one throughout the year, I'm thinking, boy, that's just the last play of the game from the Super Bowl coming back to haunt you. And that lasted throughout the season. At any rate, we at 2-4, we really start to get our act together, and we finish by winning 8 of our last 10 games last year, and we finished 10-6 with a playoff berth. Now, during the course of the season, Marshawn Lynch goes down with an injury, and he really wasn't all that effective. Seemed like he was kind of lost his step. He hit that magical age of 30, or he's right around there, and he really wasn't all that effective. And in fact, for the first time in his career, he was sidelined by injury. They say that the best ability is availability. And unfortunately for Marshawn, he wasn't available last year. But that did give one Thomas Rawls the chance to step up and shine, a rookie. And boy, did he. For the few games, I think he started 8 games, he was the best running back in the league. And anyone who plays fantasy football will agree with me on that one. He was really incredible. He just had an ability to put his foot in the ground, as they say, and just cut right upfield. And his speed, his explosiveness, and his power was really great. Everybody was calling him Mini Beast Mode. And so in addition to that, Marshawn going out, and Marshawn being such a focus of the offense, to the degree where you almost felt like Darrell Bevel was having to kind of placate him. There was that story about Marshawn Lynch at the 1-yard line during the season of the 2014 season, not getting the ball and the Hawks not getting into the end zone, and that Marshawn Lynch turned around and flipped Darrell Bevel off in the middle of the game. So, I mean, what's up with that? I don't know. But that definitely does. That's not a whatever it takes coach kind of mentality. That's a, hey, coach, give me the ball or I'm going to throw a fit kind of thing. So I think that definitely played a role in some of the play calls. And I think that it gave a certain tightness to the way the team played, knowing that Marshawn was the man. And he was. And he's my favorite Seahawk running back of all time. But it's almost kind of the blessing in disguise thing, because he goes out and there's this huge hole. So much of the identity of the team, he's on the sidelines, but he's not on the field. The identity changes, and it becomes Russell Wilson's football team. And Russell Wilson steps up and puts on a near MVP performance to save the Seahawks season, transform the identity of the offense, and bring Doug Baldwin into a Pro Bowl caliber player. We finished the season 10-6. Along the way, Thomas Rawls gets injured, and during his best performance, he's looking like an absolute stud, unstoppable, just marching down the field. I really have rarely seen a performance like that out of a running back from the Seahawks. His speed and explosiveness was incredible. At any rate, well, just when you're at the top, he broke his foot, broke his leg. In fact, I think he had to have surgery in the offseason, and he's just now coming back. He's not going to play probably in the preseason and all, and hopefully he'll be ready for the first game of the year. At any rate, we go to the playoffs. We go to Minnesota, where it's frigid and cold, and we barely win that game on a missed field goal by Minnesota. But the emotions run high, right? You think, okay, we got into the playoffs as a wild card. We go to Minnesota, which is a tough team with a solid D and a rising young star. Some might say at quarterback. And we put up a heck of a fight despite a tumultuous and up-and-down roller coaster season of unpredictability, injuries, and maybe a little bit of a disjointed locker room. Well, we go on the road and we pull it out in horrible conditions. That game was really about survival. It's frigid. And we win on a missed field goal. So, everybody's kind of thinking, hey, it's destiny. Well, guess where we got to go next? We got to go to Carolina. To play the undefeated Carolina Panthers at that point. And were they? I can't quite remember now. Anyway, so guess what? We go to Carolina, and Carolina just stomps us in Carolina, 31-0 at half, and this is pretty much a nightmare unfolding in front of our eyes. We come back after the half and make a game of it. We rally. And we wind up losing, falling just short, 24-31. So the Hawks, towards the end of that last half of their season last year, they came back into form. They really solidified, I think, what their new identity is as a proficient offense and at times explosive offense, and their defense came back around. I mean, we shut the Panthers down in the second half, 24-31 to finish up the game. So, successful season. Well, we lost the second round of the playoffs. We made the playoffs. We lost in the second round. It's hard to say, but there are shadows of the playoff loss in 2012 in Atlanta when the team came together and Russell Wilson just kept saying, I just feel so hopeful looking towards next year. And you can see that the team in 2015, the Hawks grew into something new and really morphed into something else. And we all know what happened in 2013 when they came off that loss in Atlanta. They rallied in the second half and just barely lost and came back and won the Super Bowl next year. So here we are, and preseason starts just on Saturday. We're taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, a team who is they're okay. I mean, they had a rough start last year, and they won their last 10 games, made it to the playoffs, and wound up losing to New England in the playoffs last year. So they're solid. They have a solid front line. Their defense is okay, which the whole point of this, it's not really going to be a game. But the stronger the opponent, the more you're able to test your ranks. So hopefully KC's got some depth and they can really put our guys to the test next week. This is going to be a great showing for the offensive line. In the offseason, John Schneider did he really pulled all the stops to really build up that O-line because that was our greatest weakness last year. Russell Wilson was getting hammered. He was really just getting slammed into the ground, and he's young, and he's built like a brick wall. He definitely is. He's jacked, which is helping him. I think that really saved him and his scrambling ability. But, you can't have an offense. You can't have a quarterback constantly running for his life. I mean, there were times where it looked like the O-line wasn't even there last year. So we went off, and we got that rookie O-lineman, Jermaine Ifedi. He looks like he's going to be a right guard, something like that. I think Britt is in center right now in place of Lewinsky. I don't know what happened to him. And we'll just have to see what happens at left tackle. And it's going to be interesting to see the way the offensive line shapes up this year. I know they're bigger and taller and stronger, and Tom Cable is really a heck of a coach. He's proven himself to be incredibly proficient and done some great things of being able to forge talent. He's taken defensive linemen and turned them into offensive linemen, and I think that the fact that we're getting such a head start on it this year with the O-line is really gonna be a solid unit towards the end of the year. So, with that, how about a few predictions? Flat out, what are the Hawks going to do in 2016? I say they're going to win the Super Bowl. Bam. Bold, yes, but everything is really shaping up. We've got now the emergence of Tyler Lockett, the second-year dynamic kick and punt returner and incredible receiver. That guy's got speed like crazy. Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin have proven to have a great chemistry together, and that they can get it done. And Thomas Rawls, it sounds like he's going to be back for the first preseason game. The first regular season game. But in the meantime, while he's been healing up, Kristen Michael, who had to step in a few key positions after Thomas Rawls went down last year, he really did pretty well. And he had an up-and-down career. He was facing possibly being played out in the NFL and maybe not having an NFL career, and that people are saying in the coaching staff that resonated with him, and it really opened his eyes, and he was able to step up his game, his conditioning, and his mental approach, and he is now being called the leader of that running back squad. So lots of changes. A new team. We know the defense is going to be solid. Michael Bennett's been whining a little bit about his contract, but he's been doing the stand-up thing, and he's able to compartmentalize his displeasure with his contract and just show up to training camp, get the work done, and keep that team together as a unit. And Kam Chancellor hasn't said a peep. He'll be for sure renegotiating after this year, but at least he's there, and the defense is a solid unit, and It's been a very chippy unit this year, too. A lot of those guys, those two in particular, have a lot to prove. They don't have anything to prove, but they got a chip on their shoulder like, hey, I need to get paid. So you know those guys are really going to be playing well and strong this year. It'll be fun to see the way the preseason shakes down. The Hawks have a lot of cuts to make over the next 4 weeks. We'll probably see about a quarter, maybe a half a quarter from the starters. And then we'll get to see a lot of folks from the depth. So we'll cover all that next week and talking about Hawking Out. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Leave comments down below, and I'm sure I've missed a few facts here and there, but let me know, and we'll get a dialogue going like that. And if you have any points that you want to bring up, just make sure you leave a comment down below. Stay tuned. Stay subscribed. I'll be posting any breaking news, and I'm working on a few specialty videos right now that'll be fun and pretty fun. So say it with me. I'm going to put the sign up. Say I'm in, tap that sign, and subscribe. See you next week. I'm talking about Hawking Out.